collaboration is inherently messy, but it should be fun and it should really lead to that great work. So today we have 3 projects that we feel are very much of this type of collaboration and some takeaways that will just help us work better together.
As creatives, we all put the idea of great collaboration on a pedestal. It shows up in mission statements, on job posts, and LinkedIn bios. But when was the last time you actually got to experience great collaboration on a project? In reality, big ideas often lose against big egos. People get slotted into projects at the last minute, and work gets handed off in this crappy relay race we're all participating in. It shouldn't be so hard for talented people to work together. And it doesn't have to be this challenging. To help you, I invited 2 award-winning creatives from Rethink Communications. That's Zoe Boudreaux and Jesse Shaw. They're going to share their unfiltered take on what effective collaboration should look like in this world of tight deadlines and remote work. They'll also walk you through the messy moments behind their campaigns, the ones that won them gold at cons. They'll break down their tools, habits, and mindsets that make their particular creative partnership work. They have a great sense of humor. This was one of my favorite talks all year. If you want stronger work, smoother collaborations, and fewer ego battles, keep on watching.
My name is Zoe. I am an associate creative director here at Rethink. I have about 9 years experience within the industry. I started my career in Vancouver. I've worked in Toronto, and now I work in Kelowna remotely.
And I am Jesse. I'm one of the senior motion designers here at Rethink on the design team. I've worked in Vancouver for 10 years now, worked with a lot of great people and a lot of great companies along the way.
And a big reason that we feel that we are qualified to talk about collaboration is because we did win gold in Cannes in the Young Lions competition this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
And honestly, this competition is all about collaboration, but just in the most stressful environment possible. And collaboration really is something we're doing every day. This is just some of the work that Jesse and I have done since we've been here at Rethink. And we have not done this by ourselves. We do not do this in a dark room in isolation. Teams are here helping us get our work to the best point possible. And in this industry, you know, we're claiming we're collaborating, but are we really? We know that this is a really competitive industry. There's like a lot of big egos in the room, but not this room. Yeah, things feel transactional. There's big silos. In fact, I remember a time when I was a junior designer and I was working with a creative director and I was showing my work to him for the first time and I really wanted to impress him. And yeah, it went really well. He liked everything, was really enthused. I left the presentation with him feeling like really cool. This guy's great. We're gonna have a good time. He asked for my files. I handed them off to him. And then we had a presentation the next day with our accounts team. And yeah, he changed everything. I felt annihilated. I felt pretty depressed after that. I don't know why he changed everything and he never told me, so I still don't know. Yeah, it didn't feel like a conducive environment for collaboration. I'm sure we all have stories similar to this. It's just something that happens, and Jesse and I want to challenge that. We think there's a better way. So what we think is that true collaboration is inherently messy, but it should be fun, and it should really lead to that great work. So today we have 3 projects that we feel are very much of this type of collaboration and some takeaways that will just help us, you know, work better together.
Amazing. Yeah, messy. So obviously this is not the word that we want to lead with when talking to clients about the work that we do, but we find that collaboration, like creativity, can be a messy endeavor. Now, I wish I was going to, get up here and say, here's 12 steps to, optimize this and clean it up. But no, the suggestion is to lean into this, make that energy work for you, and stay nimble. Embrace that imperfection. So as we mentioned earlier, as Zoe mentioned, we competed in this year's Young Lions competition. And for anyone that isn't familiar with it, it is a global competition, but it initially begins on a national level with the Canadian portion being hosted by the Globe and Mail. Now there's several different categories in it, but the basis for design is that you're given 24 hours, you and a teammate, and you're given a brief. And that brief is to design a brand identity for the given client. So basically everyone's given the same brief, everyone's designing for the same client. So the competition is who can design the strongest identity in the 24 hours. And that's just a photo of Zoe and I in Cannes. So this year's client was the Bike for Brain Health, which is a family-friendly cycling event in Toronto that aims to raise money and awareness for dementia and Alzheimer's research. So the competition began, it was 6 a.m. here in BC. Zoe and I hopped on a call, did a bit of brainstorming back and forth, separated for a bit, came back, discussed, and we nailed the brief immediately. So get this, bear with me. You wear a helmet when you're biking to protect your brain, which is healthy, bike, brain, health. You see where I'm going with this? Cool. So obviously being a motion designer, I'm gonna take that thing into 3D, spin it around. Zoe's gonna typeset some nice design that I'm gonna obscure with this weird goopy effect. And this took 5 hours to make. So we hopped on a call and discussed, kind of went back and forth and came to, the conclusion that this was not working and we needed to pivot and we needed to pivot fast. Now, this is obviously a difficult call to make on like any project, but especially one where we're now staring down the barrel at a potential all-nighter. But part of, collaboration and what we call true collaboration is seriously trusting the person that you're working with. So in making that call, we took a step back, kind of reconsidered and reviewed some of the earlier sketches that Zoe had done. And in particular, one of them stood out to us. And obviously, I don't want to speak for all of the motion designers here, but I think one of the skills that we bring to brand identity development is the ability to kind of see opportunities for movement and motion, ideally before anyone else. So with this new direction, oh my goodness. Guys, I'm going to learn how to use this by the end of the night. Oh, we're going. Oh my gosh. There we go. So with this new direction, we split off. Zoe focused on kind of crafting and refining that design, and I kind of spun off and focused on refining and sort of ideating on different options for how it could move. And while we were doing this, we were kind of keeping the dialogue open. And in this instance, it just led me to share a little insight that I have just purely from my own interest in gravel bike racing. And that was a potential placement for the type just based off of where logos are normally placed on the down tube of the bike. So 5 hours later, or another 5 hours later of animating and designing, it culminated in this piece. And while the entire process had, like I said, taken another 5 hours, we felt like we had collaborated and explored the identity to a much deeper extent. And in general, in starting with motion, it really helped to kind of inform other parts of the system.
One thing we really loved about this bike was that it had this sense of feeling really familiar yet unfamiliar, which felt really like a good symbolism to the symptoms of dementia, like confusion. And because we were able to move and morph it in different environments, it just felt really fresh. And we were also able to change it up into these framing devices so that you could really highlight the attendees at the bike event. We also made this really cool bike route so that people were able to see their path on the race, and this really nice motion system where when you're scrolling, the bike pedals on the landing page. We also got that bike into some wayfinding, a jersey, a bike wrap, and of course a bib so that you could really showcase who you were biking for and write that on your bib.
So a month after submitting the project, we heard back that we were one of the shortlisted teams. So we were flown out to Toronto to present our identity to a panel of judges. And this trip was also fun because it marked the first time that Zoe and I had actually met in person, because up until then we had just been collaborating entirely remotely.
Some dark mode.
I know, that was kind of fun, actually. It was moody. All right, ready? Drum roll, please. So to wrap things up, we were awarded gold and selected to represent Canada in design at this year's Young Lions competition. But one of the other really fun things that came from this was our identity, when we shared it online, got like a surprising amount of coverage, which is always nice to see. So obviously we're like proud of the work that we made, but I would say it's more fair that we're more proud of how we actually work together to make that work. Creativity and collaboration are just inherently messy endeavors. Our recommendation is embrace that energy. Don't fight it. But for, optimal results, bring your close team on as early as possible, ideally during the briefing or concepting phase. And in that, empathy and compassion are key for building a high trust, judgment-free zone. It's never easy to make the call to kill a direction, but what's worse is when everyone's, working on a particular option and just slowly coming to realization over the time that what you're working on just isn't good. To your creative process, and oftentimes leads to stronger end results. So obviously this is like fun to talk about and have a slide about, but like what's something that you could maybe implement, tomorrow if you want at your workspace? And what we'd recommend is something that we have here at the Rethink design team. And that's just a Slack channel between us and all of the other designers, where every week we get on there and share a piece of work in progress with everyone, just to, maybe because we're excited about it, maybe to spark a deeper discussion, maybe looking for more like nuanced feedback or critique. But what it does is it creates an environment where everyone kind of gets a peek into each other's creative process, and unfinished and unpolished work can kind of be celebrated and explored to a deeper extent, which, like I was saying before, oftentimes leads to stronger end results.
All right, let's talk about some fun stuff. But this project also was a little messy, so let's get into it. So this project was Sleep Origin, and this is what the project, their brand, looked like when they came to us. And Sleep Origin is a newborn sleep consultancy in Texas. And I was surprised by this brand. I didn't know this business actually existed, but I was quickly learned that actually it's a pretty saturated market and everyone looks exactly the same. But this was a good opportunity for us because we can differentiate. This project, in a nutshell, had a very tiny budget, but there were cute babies involved. And the client was pretty great. She had a really good taste of design, and she had a good vision of what she wanted. And for me, I was in because I like babies. But of course, in every project, you need to research the content. And so we had to figure out what do these babies do when they're sleeping. And what we discovered is that when you put a newborn baby to bed, you should not put any blankets in the crate or in the crib. And you should also swaddle them up nice and tightly, like so. So this was the inspiration for the logo, but also in combination of a toggle, which really was representing putting that baby into sleep mode and really spoke to the simplicity of her training program. However, when you have it in this static form, you don't really get that toggle. So it felt like a really good opportunity to collaborate with a motion designer that I've worked with in the past. Unfortunately, it was not Jesse at this point. His name is Mike Boudreaux, and I asked if he'd be interested in taking some motion to this logo and just creating more of that story for me. And what came back was pretty great. we had this logo that now had two states. It had a sleeping state and an awake state, and this really got us excited. So now we just had to sell this to the client, and how we did that was actually through business cards. And this is a direct slide from that presentation. And what this business card is, it's printed on lenticular print, and it has those two states. It has the sleeping state and the awake state. So when you actually move the card, it has that motion piece. And we just use like Homer Simpson as a reference, as you do. And she loved it. She bought it, and we made a small batch of business cards. Probably one of the coolest things I've ever printed. It's animation in real life. So that was really, really great. But we didn't stop there for the branding. We brought the logo also onto the website. So when you hover over it, you're bothering the baby and you're waking the baby up. So that's also a nice little piece. Also, the logo lives within the social, where the illustrations are getting put to sleep by the toggle and getting woken up. And another piece of this brand that was really important was the illustration. This was an educational brand. It was about teaching parents on how they can get their children to sleep. But luckily, since I have an illustrative doodly type background, this was something that I could take on myself. So there's just like an ugly sketch to, prove that I did. Yeah, we got a really nice bank of illustrations in the end that just felt really cohesive. It felt good in terms of like play and fun of this brand. But because we had this logo that had so much motion, it just felt like a little static in comparison. And it felt like there was a craving for motion. And I knew Jesse at this point. So I did send him a little Slack message, and I asked if he'd be interested to collaborate with some motion in this illustration. And what he said was,
yeah, 100%. I'm game over my lunch break.
Yeah, he at 12:04 was so excited to get in on this. And what came out of it were these really beautiful animations that were really calming and soothing and really spoke to that sleeping baby brand. Next, photography was a big piece because there was a website that was going to be built. And so this was the references for the photography that got approved. Very vibrant, really different than her competitors, and using flash photography. And the idea of the flash was that it's nighttime. You need that flash photography to really capture those moments. Unfortunately, that tiny budget did not call for photography. So this was something that we decided to take on ourselves. And the first step to that, of course, is sketching. So we had to sketch every photograph that we were going to need so that we had an understanding of the scope. And once these were approved, I had to recruit some models. So I recruited myself. I recruited my boyfriend, Anthony. I recruited Delisa from our traffic team because she had beautiful hands and we needed to leverage that. And also Erin in our design department helped with the styling. And what we came up with was some photographs that felt pretty good. And it was a really collaborative effort, and we were pretty psyched. But you might be wondering, what's up with this baby?
Whoa, where'd the baby come from?
Where did the baby come from? How did you recruit this model? But the baby actually came from a box. It was shipped to us from the client. It is not a real baby, which might be surprising. We didn't want to harm any children in the event of these photos because of some blinding lights. But yeah, it worked out great. Highly recommend. Everyone is a little creeped out by this baby, not gonna lie. No one liked it, but it was great for the shoot. Lastly, copywriting was a really awesome opportunity to inject some personality within the brand. And so I went to a copywriter, Amin, that was able to help with that copywriting, and he was excited about being part of it as well. So some of my favorite lines: your guide to A to Z's, wake up on the right side of the crib, don't lose sleep over losing sleep, and our secret formula. And it just brings so much more personality in the end. So, in a nutshell, ultimately, this brand was meant to be just for me. I was the only one that was scoped out for it. But by the end of the day, there was actually 10 other people that helped bolster this brand to be so much better that it could be than me by myself. And another really great thing about collaborators is when you're not able to make the coasties, you have collaborators. So here we have ECD, Hans and Jesse grabbing that gold for Sleep Origin not too long ago, which is amazing. So some key takeaways from Sleep Origin. If the collab is fun, it's just going to show within the work. These types of projects, they don't come around often. People want to be a part of these fun projects. It's just a magnet for it. Let people in. They want to be in the fun, and it's just going to make the project that much better. One big thing when I was a junior is I felt that a lot of the opportunity laid within these really big budgets. And that's just not the case. It seems as though a lot of the opportunity can be found in these really small and nimble projects. So just make the opportunity for yourself. And lastly, add those joyful pieces just for the love of it. We're in a creative field. We should, if there's something you want to make, show it to the client. Sleep Origin did not ask for lenticular cards or any motion pieces. This was just stuff we wanted to make. And so do it.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is a really big word to speak to, so I'm going to do my best here. I'm already doing great. The ADCC, or the Advertising and Design Club of Canada, if anyone isn't familiar with it, holds an annual competition or an award show in Toronto every November to celebrate the very best in advertising and design. And every award show has a brand new identity. And for this year's awards, Rethink was selected to be the agency to develop the identity. So we were given several months and went back and forth for a while to kind of ideate on some different options. And I think it's safe to say what we landed with in direct comparison to Zoe's last project, which was characterized by fun and joy, where we netted out was like characterized by anxiety and just a general unease about the future. In the past couple of years, we've seen some like insane jumps in the capabilities of generative AI, and it's left myself and like a lot of people wondering kind of about the future industry and a profession that they've come to know and love. But this is also sort of pinned up against a sick fascination of like, what does visualizing this technology look like? And, you know, how can you actually explore the visual concepts of machine learning? But then this is also pinned up against just, you know, the intense and gross environmental cost of the technology and just the absurd amount of digital slop it creates. So we went back and forth for a while. And when I say we, I mean myself, our ECD of design, Hans, another associate creative director here, Justin, and one of our copywriters, Hannah. And we kind of discussed for a while on how to visualize, you know, these themes of unease and sort of this conflict between people and generative AI. And the breakthrough point in visualizing it was when Justin shared this book cover, which is the 1988 cover of William Gibson's Neuromancer, specifically the Japanese edition designed by Yukimasa Okamura. And it kind of felt like it put a lot of feelings that we had into place about this sort of unease with AI and all the visual noise that it creates. So a really fascinating thing about a lot of the free versions, specifically of these generative AI programs, is that they have this like weird feature where you can see a feed of everything that everyone else is generating with it. And if you've ever had the time or interest for some reason to scroll through this, you see some like really unhinged stuff, which is like a strange representation of like what people are doing with this like incredibly environmentally costly technology, but also this like, you know, incredible piece of tech. So instead of like adding our own generative AI slop to the pile, we just went through and combed 100 of our favorite images that we felt were the most like indicative of the uncanniness that generative AI has become known for. And with that, we applied those 100 images at random to this 3D model of a character. And while it was like certainly, it's interesting to look at, it wasn't quite there. And how we got it there was just through this continued conversation between everyone on the team and just talking about, the copywriting, other design decisions like, typography, layout, color, and just building towards this sort of core idea that we eventually landed on, being that human creativity is irreplaceable. But just in talking about that, that kind of unlocked an approach for me in that, if you insert a human back into the process, that could maybe solve one of these problems. So instead of randomly assigning these images, I went through all 100 of them and just visually ranked them from light to dark, and then ran that through the image sampler. And what that landed with was something that was, when it came together, a lot more like visually apparent that you were looking at a person. But let me take a step back and get into the weeds here. So the character initially begins in 3D where it's lit and posed, and then a image like a render or an animation is taken. And from that, we take that black and white render and run it through a program called Cavalry. And we use its image sampler specifically, and that's how we apply all of this digital AI slop to it. And one of the really interesting things in Cavalry is that you're able to affect the position coordinates of these images, and that's what leads to this really interesting disintegration effect. So from here, this image went onto the poster, and from the poster, we mailed it out to people, and it went into everyone's hands. We really liked this image. We were super excited when we saw it. So the goal of the campaign, really, and the thesis of the idea is that human creativity is irreplaceable and generative AI kind of crumbles apart in comparison to it. But in saying that, the way in which it crumbles apart actually led to a bunch of really, I think, compelling key imagery, which also, if I would say so, looks decent in motion in the way that it kind of like explodes and spins apart. So all of this has kind of led to what I've seen as the apex of the identity, and that is the show opener that plays at the beginning of the award show. Now, I wish I could, show it right now, but unfortunately it hasn't premiered yet. But what I will say is if you're in Toronto in a couple of weeks for the ADCC Awards, please enjoy. The entire team is so proud of what we made. But what I can share, and in keeping with the spirit of showing unfinished work, here's a little peek into the previs of the final sequence of the opener before all of the AI slop is added on top of it. So all this is to say, great work comes when people across disciplines are collaborating together in tandem, not through handoffs. And what I mean by that is every piece that everyone was working on this project, from the copywriting to the design, everything was working towards to kind of build on that key core idea and making sure that every piece you craft and everything that everyone works on is laddering up to that single idea. And as a creative on the more like technical end of things, I would say our secret sauce in this whole process kind of comes from being able to take that idea and then explore it just through like a bunch of, testing and like different kinds of experiments. And then from that, sort of refining those experiments through like repeated technical testing to really hone in and land on that core idea. Okay, let's recap. How do you collaborate, embrace the mess, and foster judgment-free zones?
Invite people into the fun.
Okay, we ready for this? 1, 2, 3. Work
as
collaborators, not hand offers. Nice.
All right. Oh,
whoa.
You snapped. All right.
Thank you.
So now we're going to be collaborating.
Now we get to collaborate with everyone.
Yeah. Are y'all ready for that?
You guys ready?
Yeah,
nice.
maybe.
Yeah, we're ready.
All
cool.
right.
Amazing.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do now. You got to find a group of
Turn
2
to
to
the person
4
next to you or multiple people next to you. I don't know.
And then we're going to discuss within 10 minutes your proudest collaborative moment and why you felt like it worked.
All
So
right,
if
3,
you
2,
can
1,
do that
go.
now, yes, please communicate with each other.
Make a friend or don't.
While the folks here percolate on the question they're about to ask you, I'd like to kick it off because I have the mic in my hand. Do you guys have any resources that you recommend around collaboration? Because there's a lot of education around craft and business, but this specific topic I feel is not talked about a ton. So is there podcasts, YouTube, books, anything like that that you'd recommend to folks?
Yeah.
I would say tools. Like I think Figma is huge for, at least in our industry, tools that you can like collaborate and like put things together. Just having eyes on everything. We also do everything in Google Slides, so presentations are viewed by everyone at all times. Those are like some big tools. Do you have any resources?
I think any sort of, I know this is, I don't know, like if we're talking more about the soft skills of the whole thing, I think like really taking time and doing any sort of reading on, I don't want to say like meditation or something, but being able to approach when you're collaborating with people in like a way more mindful setting, I think is super important. A lot of the writing on like mindfulness or meditation, I think does really focus on being like present, and being able to bring that presence to collaboration is super important. And it's nice because it's not, framed in a way of like, here's how you should work with a creative director or something. Like you're able to kind of separate work and like, learn from that in a bit more of a grounded space, and then be able to apply that in work. That'd be my recommendation.
That's awesome.
Are you suggesting to fix yourself through like psychology? Yes.
Let's put hands up. Anybody
progress.
what? Nope. Pop. But a question. Any questions?
Oh, this is fun.
Hi. This is more of a question about when you're working in a partnership. Often when you're ideating, it can be really easy to just kind of, maybe in your mind, you're kind of bookmarking it as like, oh, this was kind of like my idea and this was my partner's idea. And as things are moving forward, it can sometimes feel like it's tricky to be like, I don't know if I want to kill this because I think they have more heart in it. But how do you find a way to sort of make those decisions if it feels like people are being a little bit more sort of connected to an idea, maybe because it was theirs and that kind of thing?
I think trying to like spread ownership on, like, I can totally fall into that sometimes, that's like my own ego. I'm like, I want my idea to get chosen. But I think that like in a collaborative practice or like in just working together, we should all be like touching every part of the project. And the hope is that like with just the mixing of things that people will all feel ownership. And I think like not segregating like certain, like this is your area, this is my area. I think that would help a lot, and have people just mixing on areas. Like you should be mood boarding or whatever on all of the pieces. So it's like ownership and not like phrasing like, oh, this person's idea. It's like, this is our work together.
I like that. The messiness is the answer.
Yeah, get into the mess. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I'm kind of curious. Freelancing, it's a little harder to in on the ground brief, sort of. You know what I mean? Like, do they know the background, the research, or is it just what they see? How do you collaborate?
I can actually speak directly to this. The first time Zoe and I worked together, I was a freelancer. I was freelancing for Rethink, and yeah, when I was brought on to the project, they walked me through sort of the core concepting and everything, but then gave me the space to sort of explore, trusting me in regards to my skill set as a motion designer, and sort of saying like, okay, here's where we're working at from a design perspective. what can you kind of bring to this entire, experience, or how can you be crafting this, using your skill set. So I think that helped to kind of really onboard me, I think, in a more like structured manner. Obviously this was in this instance, there's been several, especially as like, motion designers will get dropped on projects quite late in the concepting. And I think that tends to be, just in my own experience, the recognizing, what projects tend to end stronger. And that's ones where everyone was brought on ideally as early as possible, or at least are brought on and given the full like scope of how the design thinking got to the point that they're at.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Some teamwork here. You want to pass that back?
Thank you. I know you guys talked a lot about some examples of great collaboration, but I was just wondering, what are some potential pitfalls that you've come across for collaboration, and how do you avoid them?
Yeah, like pitfalls of collaboration. I feel like not having enough information is a huge pitfall, like not knowing when things are due, or like the project, and not having a brief, I feel like has been a struggle on every project, like, or that has been in that it's a bit too messy maybe. And I think it's important to have everyone has the same information so that we're all working towards the same goal. I think that's a pretty big one.
I think also like in that honesty is a big thing, like with yourself and then obviously with everyone else. I think there can be these instances where, you're looking for information on a project and there's more like sub-contextual information, like someone is just particularly tied to a direction, either because, it's a rehash of something they've designed in the past and they feel particularly like beholden to it. They maybe design some aspect of the system that they really want incorporated into this new identity. And I think like having a team that's able to be like honest and candid in that, and kind of being able to have those conversations, I think is super important. Like being able to step around those kind of common pitfalls. I wish it wasn't as straightforward as like egos tend to get in the way, but I think that's why like being able to have open conversation about these things, at least in our experience, has really helped. Oh, yeah. Is it dying on us?
Two more. Get this thing going. Here we go. Hello. Two more. Anybody on this?
Thanks, Adam. Amazing talk. Thanks, both. James, creative director here. Just got a question about creative collaboration outside of creative teams. So when you work with clients, would you say that you include those clients as creative collaborators as well? And if so, what ways do you try and include them in the creative dialogue along the process? What time do you bring them in, etc.?
Yeah, we definitely have a process that we try to like really bring in clients in part of the process. It's really good at like the buy-in as well. We do in design, at least, like a sandbox phase. We don't do any work. We do tons of sketching as well. And a lot of that is to bring the client along and not just ta-da them and be like, ta-da, here's the work. And usually that doesn't really go too well because they don't see themselves in it and they need to, right, to really buy it. So we do take a lot of like steps in the process so that they feel heard. They need to be part of that. They are a huge collaborator. And we want them to feel included. So I think, yeah, that's a really good question.
Hello.
I'll be quick before it dies. Thanks so much, guys, for the talk. I was curious to know how collaboration shows up for you remotely, because you mentioned that you live in Kelowna. So it's amazing that you've been able to make such cool work. So I was curious to know how that shows up in your work stream when you're not even physically able to come together to talk about ideas.
A lot of meetings online. Zoom, I know a lot of people probably don't love Zoom, but that is my big tool. And the thing is like, yeah, you have to make a lot of intentional meetings because your calendar can fill up pretty fast. But meeting with the team more often, I would say, because you don't really get the office experience of like walking into someone, oh yeah, what are you working on? So yeah, I do like weekly meets with people to just see like say hello, honestly, because I do need that social aspect as well. But it also helps with just the collaboration also, because then it doesn't feel maybe genuine, like just placing a meeting in someone's calendar. But when you're remote, like you just need to throw it in there and force conversation, and like that's okay. But yeah, do you have anything to add? No?
I mean, I think in that, like, yeah, making space for those conversations is super important. Exactly like what you're saying, missing out. We miss a lot of that, natural dialogue and even just like body language and stuff when you're communicating digitally. So being very, open and clear when you're talking, like if there's something that you're like not excited about, just being like, hey, and this can either be like a conversation that you're having, like if you're talking in person, that can be difficult to like have that straightforward conversation. So if it's easier and if you're more comfortable, like sending it in like a Slack and then getting on a call and being like, hey, when I sent that message and said I wasn't as crazy about that, let me explain what I mean. And just sort of, there's like a sort of set of like soft skills that I think everyone as humans are like continuing to develop as we work remotely. So being like open to that experience is tricky, and not being like, not closing yourself off to those moments where you're able to kind of like share genuine thought with people. But yeah, no, and just the continued development of collaborative like software like Figma and stuff. I wish it wasn't as straightforward as that, but there's like huge jumps that have been made, and it makes life so much easier. So super excited about that.
Awesome. Let's give one more round of applause, guys.